So, welcome to this episode of Women in Rugby League, the pioneering years. And I'm really excited about this because we haven't touched on this sort of era yet and moving into the present day, but just a pioneer of not just women's rugby league, girls rugby league, but also particularly sort of from the Castleford area and all the work that she did as well with Wala and women's amateur rugby league and county and international and the list goes on. So welcome, Bev Walker.
Hello.
Hello. So let's, without further ado, so obviously you're from Castleford. Just tell us a bit about coming from Castleford and how you sort of got involved in rugby league. How did it all start for you?
So to be fair, I actually came from York originally.
Oh no, big
I
error.
know. I was born in York and lived there till I was 19. Rugby actually started at York. Rydale York, as they were at the time, gave free tickets away to schools, and a girl I was friends with at school, they went to the rugby. So we started getting free tickets to go watch Rydale York. Met the infamous, famous Julie Cronin, as she was then. So from high school age, went to played a few games with York, and then studying and stuff like that. So my first ever game was as a 16-year-old on Mother's Day, which my mum wasn't overly impressed about. And I'm almost certain we played Hull Vixens, which was Nikki Carter,
Mm.
which as a 16-year-old, Nikki Carter was somebody that you knew about. And it was an interesting first experience. But I survived and obviously enjoyed it because I played after that. But
So would this be in the early 1990s then?
yeah, yeah. So being 16, that would have, I tried to work it out. It was 1994, which is cringy when you think about it now. But yeah, it was sort of down to Julie Cronin. She was a name that was bandied around the York, and met her, and she's a big personality, as we all know. Um, so yeah, did a little bit then, but then unfortunately player numbers and stuff like that, as we all know within women's rugby, player numbers increase and decrease at varying different times and stuff. So um, also school and stuff like that, I wanted to work as well as learn. I didn't want to go to university. I wanted to work and learn, and like emailed. No, I didn't email at all. I wrote loads of letters to companies and stuff, and one went to Hickson's in Castleford, and they offered me a place to go to work and also do day release to go to Huddersfield Uni to do chemistry. And Steve Welford was employed at Hickson's at the same time, and Steve Welford was well known around the Castleford area, was a Red Hill coach for a long time. Married to Sharon Welford, who was Sharon Birkenhead. I think she went on the 96 tour. I'd
She
have to
did,
check
yeah, she did.
the facts. But yeah, so he was involved with getting Cas Panthers girls set up. So my CV did the rounds at Hickson's. I get a phone call when I'm at work at this new place that's not where I'm from. And he's seen that I'd played a bit of rugby and asked me if I was interested in going to Cas Panthers. And I actually went to their house for tea after work. After work, before a training session, I went to their house for tea. He was keen to get players. I went to a training session and pretty much never looked back. All started from there, ended up moving to Cas after I travelled backwards and forwards, going to work and training and a bit of sofa surfing and all that kind of thing. Actually moved to Cas when I was 19, basically because of rugby. So yeah, that's sort of where it started from. So yeah, I'm not actually originally a Castleford girl. I
I've known you all these years, and I think I sort of knew it, but I didn't. So that's
yeah.
brilliant that we've got that out into the open.
Yeah, so then the beginning. So Roland Davis, obviously we all know Roland as well. So he was at York, and I actually worked. If you ever catch up with Roland and he tells you any of the many stories, I actually worked in the office at Rydale York as well on match days. So again, just sort of went from not really being involved into being fully in at the deep end. And looking after the office stuff on a match day. My mum ended up selling programs or doing raffles or on the turnstile, whatever. My stepdad, my sister, like we just sort of were in, and yeah, sort of were in and up to his neck in it. Well, I was up to my neck in it from then till basically till having my daughter, till having Evie. I did sort of dabble a bit again afterwards. And then sort of I'm back in again now with bits of stuff. But yeah, 19 moved to Cass, played at Panthers. Oh, sorry. We have automatic lights in the office. And yeah, that's where it started from. That's where it started. I think I've forgotten the question though. Do you want to remind me?
No, it was just about how did you get involved. So basically, it was the fact that they gave you pre-match tickets. You got involved, and then your whole family ended getting involved in Rydale York.
Yeah.
And the legendary Julie Cronin, wow. And then moving on to Cass Panthers. So tell us a bit more about sort of the Women's League and Cass Panthers at that time, because it will have been Red Hill would have been just finishing, wouldn't it? And Cass Panthers came on.
Yeah, so Red Hill was still around. I didn't get a date down. So in October 1999, we played Red Hill, I think for the first time, because it's on video. So the YouTube videos that I had, they're on that closed link, which I can give you, because a lot of people who I asked who were in our team, I asked if they'd mind us sharing it, and they said no. So it's closed at the minute. But yeah, so that there's actually video footage of that game. But yeah, Red Hill was still around. Panthers were, I don't really know like all of it, but maybe this is all of it. They were a girls' team. They started off with a girls' team, with a view to then progressing into an open age team. Sharon had played at Red Hill, I think. I don't know how much before Panthers started. Sharon had been playing at Red Hill. Steve had coached at Red Hill, and then Steve was going to coach the Panthers girls, but they were all very young. Nat Towning was sort of 14, I think. Which the rules changed after a couple of years, else some of them would have never been able to play. Maybe she was 16, I don't know. I'd have to double check. But yeah, they were all really young, and then there was an odd few like older players. But like I was only 18, 19, sort of coming over to get involved. And I hadn't really played much, to be fair. I played excuse me, maybe half a season if I started Mother's Day. Not even half a season, perhaps. But learned quite a lot, actually. I'll just name drop a couple of people. I remember Gary and Paul Atkins were the coaches over at York with Julie and stuff. So they were a positive influence to start off with. And one thing I sort of remember is I always felt like I was being coached to play rugby. I wasn't being coached as a female playing rugby. I was being coached to play rugby. And I think sometimes that's where people fall out. I don't quite get it right in that, we're just rugby players. There doesn't need to be anything different. It's just rugby. Just teach people to play rugby, whatever skills they need and that kind of thing. So, excuse me, one sec. Yeah, so the Panthers was a group of young lasses, and then the odd older player who had a bit of experience, or then older lasses who wanted to get involved. And they'd done quite well as young players. Sorry, it's getting me, this cough.
It is.
They'd done quite well as young players, and Nat Towning was a very talented player. Marie Colley started playing. They just needed more people, and then more people to integrate with the skills and stuff. So, yeah, it went from there, really. Sorry, excuse me.
That's all right.
What was the other part of the question?
It was just about those early doors and about actually playing in the league, what it was like. So
yeah, so that's something else actually I noticed on me. Little bit of a reminder earlier. Playing in the mud, like we always played. It was winter rugby. The kits were really heavy. It was muddy. It rained a lot. It was cold. Bonfire night, you used to go and have to check the pitch the day after because there'd be fireworks sticks all over the pitch because we were at amateur clubs. We did loads of stuff ourselves. We had Panthers was brilliant. They had Enid Hepworth, who was a local legend. She did tons around the Panthers. We were based out of the pub then still as well. They didn't have the clubhouse then. So we were based out of the Shoulder and Morton pub just up the road from Three Lanes playing fields. And yeah, just good crack. Everybody mucked in and, did what needed to be done, carried post protectors up and down the road or to the container that was down on the field. travelled in cars all over the place. But mud, I think, is probably the overriding memory. Yeah,
Mud
mud.
and cold.
Mm. But I never minded it. I never minded it. I would rather play in the mud than on the rock hard pitches. So fast forward a bit, take it to wanting to, like, people talking about playing summer rugby and stuff. You just wouldn't want to on amateur pitches because they were so dangerous with how hard they were. We always said, if you can't play on an icy pitch, why would you play on one that's rock hard? Because it's dry, in the summer and stuff. So yeah, mud.
So how many seasons did you play for Cast Panthers then?
Oh, crikey. So started, what will it have been? 97, 98, started that season. Because there's a compilation video as well, actually, that we've got from there. And Evie was born in 2010, so like 12 years, I suppose, if is that right? Work it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2000, yeah. 97, 98 to 2009 for Evie to be born in 2010. So played all that time and started coaching quite early on as well. Because one of the things about Panthers was that we wanted to try and keep, a good women and girls section and stuff. So when I'm not 100% sure of the background again, but I think it was something to do with whatever was going on in the year 2000. I think there was like some precursor stuff for a girls, some girls rugby to get the numbers up and to do a bit of stuff. And I'm almost certain it was like sevens. We played some sevens games through the summer with a view to starting a bit more of a structure towards the winter. So I started coaching. So not long after starting playing, I got involved with coaching, and various different players sort of got involved and helped out with that. But I sort of saw it through, so did playing and coaching the entire way through. That whole period, that whole time.
Yeah, because you were very active in the girls and the women's game. That 2000, Jackie was going around clubs helping them get awards for all, linked to the League World Cup. So it fits really lovely.
Yeah, so that must be what that is then.
Yeah. So when we had the World Cup, the first ever World Cup, which was actually here in that 2000, she put a development program in the back of it to leave a bit of a legacy.
So well that that'll have been it then.
Yeah. So because I mean you were involved in the girls and the women's game, weren't you, in coaching and administration and
so the playing open age, but then coaching the girls, and then the girls we sort of built that section up and I think we started at under 14s because I think, and like you said, Jackie might have a bit more of why it was started at that age. I might have been under 13s actually, because girls were having to stop playing with boys at 11, under 11s. So then to capture anybody coming out of mixed rugby, you needed to be under 13s because there wasn't as many numbers. So they could play across a 2-year age band. So then you catch them coming out of the under 11s before they lose interest and stuff like that and keep them in. And then, so under 13s, maybe 7s tournaments through the summer to an under 14s league that winter. I feel like that maybe fits. But then through that time, we went from that one team to teams above and below. I mean, obviously it takes time to build up, but then if you can keep the 14s into the year after, but then get some more, the girls' league ended up with leagues at 12s, 13s, 14s, 15s, and 16s because you could play 2 years. So the fixtures were every other week. So then if you played 13s one week, you could perhaps play under 14s the other week. And all the players got different experiences. They played different positions because they were against different opposition and got more rugby. But, like the younger ones got a bit more responsibility in their own age group. And then when they played up that year, the others would sort of do more unless they were that good. And then they would take control in both teams. I felt it worked really well, to be fair. And by the time we got to the tail end of me being involved, we had like 40, 50 girls.
Oh, wow.
Across the different age groups playing regularly and being pretty successful. Did under 16s one particular year, which again, it all links together nicely. The under 16s one year went through a season unbeaten. We didn't have a lot of cups and trophies and stuff like that, but they did go through a season unbeaten, conceded not very many points at all. And then the year that they all came into the open age was the year that we won the first division, I'm pretty certain. So it just sort of showed that we gave them a really good grounding, and that the under 16s was a really good league to then, give them enough to then be able to play open age and do a really good job at that as well.
Because did many come from the champion schools? Because I mean, it was prolific, wasn't it? The Castleford area for champion schools.
Do you know that was a really weird one, because not really.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a really strange thing. Castle were really good at champion schools, but we got very few players from it. I actually coached in schools, but I coached at Airedale, coming out of work and going coaching at Airedale for a bit of that. And they were the odd one, but yeah, not as many as you would have liked. It was a bit frustrating, to be honest, because I couldn't understand why girls would play at school and not play at clubs. But then vice versa, we had girls at clubs that didn't play at school. It was quite a weird situation, and I don't know that I could ever give you a reason why.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because the whole philosophy behind development at that point was get into schools and then get them into clubs, and then they'll be regular players.
Yeah, it was strange. Like I say, and I don't really understand why. And to be fair as well, so Cass did a lot of champion school stuff, but a lot of our players came from other places. We had girls from Fev that came over. We had girls from Nottingham that came down. Where it's the same with everything. It's the people driving it that keep stuff going. And a lot of teams, juniors, whether it be boys or girls, it would be somebody's parent that was the coach. Whereas I was never not till like after I'd finished. I wasn't somebody's parent. I wasn't somebody's auntie, somebody's sister. I just did it because I wanted to still play. And if these kids didn't still play and progress through, I'd have to stop playing. So it was a little bit selfish, but it was a lot of stuff it was a big commitment to be a bit selfish. But yeah, if I didn't do it, somebody else would have had to do it. And then, I might as well just keep doing it, because you see it now, like Cass has got quite a lot of girls that play round and about, but one season they're at this club and another season they're at this club, because whether it is the same kids, which some of them I know do transfer around, but I don't know if it's because it's somebody's dad, somebody's mum, somebody's big sister, big brother that've coached them, and then that kid don't want to play anymore, so then we need somebody else, and it just all gets a bit. It relies on a small number of people, and if there's not somebody independent dealing with it, then once that commitment's gone, it falls apart then. So we were always a bit different in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And having that independent person is really key, isn't it, by the sound of it? So tell us about your playing days and what that was like, and why, because obviously you were driven, as you say, you were selfish, but you weren't, by the way. You were just doing what was the right thing to get more people coming through. About your playing days and what it was like as a community with those players, and what you had to do to play, really, in order to get games.
Yeah, so I mean, the league structure from my point of view was pretty decent. There was quite a few clubs around. So that first season, we finished second division champions, but it was Division 1 and 2. It wasn't Premier League and 1 and 2. It was 1 and 2. Like that's sort of how it was. But we lost the first game of the season away at Woolston, I think. But then from that point on, I don't think we lost another game until the cup final, which was a bit annoying. But we won the league and Birkenshaw won the cup when Julie Burgess was playing, Sam and the twins and Luke, their mum. Yeah. But yeah, I suppose as players, we were a little bit immune to the rest of the stuff that went on, getting sponsorship, like people traveling, driving us to games, because with it being a young squad, how many people actually had somebody to drive them? A lot of them's parents perhaps would watch them at home, but wouldn't necessarily travel away. So I could drive. So there'd be a car full of us and we'd get some music on and we'd travel to wherever we were going with no sat nav, just a list of instructions of how to get there. Sorry, the lights have gone again. No sat navs, a list of instructions, and we always seem to get it wrong, but we always seem to find where we needed to be. We'd go to, like say, Woolston or Crossfields, or not till later on actually, but Birkinshaw. And we just dug in and got on with it. The kit went in the kit bag and somebody took it away and it came back the next week clean. And then as you get a bit older, you realise actually somebody's doing that. So put your kit in the bag, girls, because somebody's got to clear up after us here. And sand comes out of your socks when you've not put them away the right way around, so they're still full of sand after they've been washed. And bagpacking, we'd go bagpacking in the supermarket to try and raise some money to get a new kit or some jumpers. Or one year, somebody's mum, Marie Pinnington's mum, Julie, she made us some like tops that were like they were sort of similar to the Great Britain ones, like a heavy cotton overhead collared like top. But I think she worked at Burberry's or something. She was a seamstress or something like that. Wow. She must have worked for one of those places. So she made us all these tops in this unique design, rather than getting them from Ravensport or whichever Stag or wherever was doing tracksuits or whatever you could sort of get. But we'd backpack, or we'd try and do a sponsored thing, and there'd be raffles every week, and somebody bring a bottle for the raffle after the game. And a meat raffle. There was like a meat raffle that had happened. Like, I don't even know if they do that sort of thing anymore. The hygiene's probably taken over. But you'd be in a pub after the game, and somebody would come around with a meat raffle, and then nobody wanted to take it home because it's like this meat in this weird tray. Then you'd travel to Bradford somewhere and you were having to take it home. Like, what are we going to do with this? Like, give it to somebody else or whatever. So, but like, it just felt, it was just normal. And we all sort of mucked in and we loved it. And when we were still at the Shoulder and Mutton, if we trained on I don't know if we trained on a Thursday or a Friday night, but there'd be like a DJ on in the pub, so we'd just stay, and you might have a few drinks, you might not, because some of them were a bit younger, but then there'd be like all the action song dances, like daft stuff, like I don't know if it's quite Steps era with the 5, 6, 7, 8 and that kind of thing, but not quite YMCA, but we'd just have a laugh and we'd just muck about and dance to these silly action songs where they all had routines, like kids with TikTok these days, but we just did it to the full song, dances and all that daft stuff. It just great times, just a real laugh. A bit of adversity, a bit of up to your eyeballs in mud on a Sunday afternoon, and then a laugh in the car driving there, and just team stuff. It's really good fun, and like it's only when you start thinking about it that you come up with all these memories and that kind of thing. But it's
and you're still in touch with quite a lot of them.
Yeah, a good few of them. Yeah. If we ever go anywhere and somebody says hello to me, Evie will say, "Who's that?" Oh, I know him from rugby. Because you just know people from everywhere. And sometimes I have to rack my brain and think, I'm not sure who that person is, because there's just so many people, but there's always that like a kinship or a like a camaraderie kind of a thing, depending on if you've played with or against. But even if you've played against, it's just that common ground that you've got with all these people from all over the place, that you've always got those memories and that time, and whether it's been adversity or fun or whatever, you've just always got them. And it's good. And quite a few of them, not regular contact because life gets in the way, doesn't it? But when you do see each other, it's like you've never been away.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's when you're sort of looking back at your career, let's start with a player, what's your proudest achievement as a player?
Oh, crikey. Do you know, I have a really bad memory for specific things until something gets said, and then it sends you on like a rabbit hole of different stuff. Scoring the winning try in a cup final's got to be a good one.
Yeah.
Although I couldn't tell you tons about it. I kind of tell you more what other people have told me afterwards. And there's not much evidence of it, but there is one photograph in existence somewhere of a pile of bodies, and apparently I'm at the bottom of this pile of bodies, having scored a try from around halfway at Featherstone. when we beat Hillside from Rochdale. So John and Helen Cobb, who were massive in the girls' game
Mm.
for a long time, and then Hillside Hawks ladies as well. We always had quite tough games with them, whether it was the girls or as the women, and they'd win one at home and we'd win one at home, and it was always quite tight. And we played them in the cup final at Featherstone. I couldn't tell you what year without checking.
Mm.
Katie Birkenhead, I'm pretty sure, had already kicked the drop goal. So I did score the winning try that put the game to bed, but we were already just in front. But yeah, that's got to be
Right up there.
Yeah. Played England Wildcats, which was pretty good. Yorkshire, but I don't have many actual memories of any of those games. Whether you could put it down to knocks on the head or whether you put it down to just life,
Yeah.
not remembering a lot of these things. But Wildcats was pretty good. Pretty proud to have been able to get into that because
Absolutely. And Wildcats, because people might not know who they were. They were the team that, because there was very little opposition for Great Britain at that time, was there? So they needed the best of the rest, really,
yeah. So it was
in
the
order
best
to
of the
have a
rest.
bit of
Yeah.
a competitive. And there was always a bit of an edge to those games because it's people also that thought they should have been selected.
Yeah, and to be fair, so some players did. So one thing I haven't got around to telling you that I've come across is a Wildcats shirt.
Ah, fab.
I've actually got a Panthers shirt, a Wildcats shirt, and a Yorkshire shirt that I didn't know were in the cupboard. But Evie wanted fancy dress out last week for Halloween, so I went in the cupboard and they were there. So yeah, there's a Wildcats shirt in there, which I mean they're massive. Evie looked at them and she was like, they're ginormous when you compare them with the slim fit shirts that the players have these days and stuff. But and really thick, heavy stag kit. But yeah, that in hindsight, like you sort of like rue the missed opportunities, perhaps, and like should stuff have happened differently? But it is what it is,
Mm,
Can never go back and relive it,
yeah.
and stuff. But yeah, that was pretty good, and we were supposed to play. I think we were supposed to play at Warrington. One of the finals was in Warrington, and it was supposed to be the first and second, and then third versus Wildcats. But because it was such bad weather, that game never ended up getting played. So we went to the game, but yeah, we never actually got to play
Yeah.
the international opposition. With I think I mean, somebody else might tell me wrong differently, but I think because we were supposed to play it because somebody dropped out. I don't know if it was the New Zealand Maoris dropped out. It's in the letters actually, so I've got the
Yeah.
Wildcats letters, and we were going to play then. So you'd like to think you would have at least been in the squad, got selected to play, but the night was horrible. It was a really wet, rainy night at Wilderspool, not even at the
Yeah.
Warrington.
Because that's where they played the final, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, in 2000. Yeah.
yeah.
And it
So
was a horror. That was the World Cup, wasn't it? That was washed out. The men's and women's World Cup was washed out that year.
I mean, I'll take your word for it because to be fair, I can't really remember. But like I remember it being wet and rainy and cold and miserable. And then reading through the letters, sort of piecing
Mm.
bits of things that people have said together. I think that's when that was.
Yeah, some games had to be moved last minute. So Rochdale wouldn't have the fixture, so they had to move it to Hull, I think.
Oh, blooming heck,
Last
right.
minute, within hours of kickoff, because Rochdale was a soccer ground and they decided they didn't want the turf to be turned up by these women. And that was one of the World Cup games. It's like, for goodness sake, I
Because they played
know.
at Cass as well, didn't they? There was a game
Yeah,
at Cass. Yeah.
yeah,
Because Rachel Timpson, referee.
yes.
So I bumped into her recently. She's a friend of a friend. And she was supposed to run the line, but tore her Achilles and had to be swapped out, and she had to do the in goal because she tore her Achilles and had to. She still managed to be involved in the game, but couldn't do the bit that she was supposed to do because she couldn't get about, so her leg was strapped up. And yeah, so we chatted about that the other day. She was on about this whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a small world. This rugby league.
Oh, it
World
is a
of
small
sport.
world, and it's a lovely community, isn't it? And the more I sort of dig into it, and the more I rekindle, really, people that I've known and actually haven't known a huge amount of detail, but known that they've been involved for a long time. It's lovely. It's a lovely thing to do, and also to help people relive some of the stuff because it's so important that people know what's gone in the past and that rugby league didn't start in 2017 for women, that there was so much happened before. And actually the era you played was when it was really growing, the women's
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, I would say that. Like we had two divisions, and so I don't we got a lot of games videoed, and then some of it's a bit jumbled up, but there was a good number of teams in each division. So that's a lot of players, there was a lot of people out there. So as much as, you know, the spotlight's on a lot of stuff now, and like the girls playing and it being on the BBC at the weekend is amazing. But none of that would be possible if it wasn't for all the people that came along beforehand, because, I play because of Julie. Julie was my inspiration for getting involved in playing. And then I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but when you look at the jigsaw and how it all fits together, I played with Marie Colley. Marie Colley's coaching Featherstone. Featherstone are in the Super League. If Featherstone weren't in the Super League, there'd be less teams, so the games potentially would be less competitive. And then I coached a lot of like players through, through time. So there's girls, Holly Mae Dodd, I coached at Brotherton after I'd had Evie. So Holly Mae Dodd and Kira Bennett, who both played at the weekend, I coached them for a season at under 14s when they played at Brotherton. But Georgie Hetherington, she was at Panthers. She was a young lass that, I first met her when she was 10 or 11. And her little legs looked like string with knots in coming out the bottom of the shorts because she was a tiny wee little thing. And so if none of us had done any of that stuff, like, Marie played with us and then went into coaching. Grace Field, she's a Leeds player, Brogan Church, she's a Featherstone player. They've all played and had influences from different places. And I'm not taking credit for their careers, but if we weren't all there and around with these influences from elsewhere, it wouldn't be the way that it is now. So you can't, it's only been around more recently, because it wouldn't be the way that it is if it wasn't for everything from beforehand.
And interestingly, because you've got to build that base, and you've got to, I remember the frustration sort of in the 90s and 2000 when I was involved in development was, kept saying the women haven't got the experience of the coaching. Well, there's no excuse for that now, because we're well into the history of the women's game where, looking at, the England game on television, you were there, so you won't have seen it. The women commentators were brilliant. They were superb. The knowledge, the way they came across and everything else, because they had a history steeped in the history of the game, and they were able to play, unlike, you and I, we weren't allowed to play at school. Whereas they've been had that, and it takes years to build. That sort of platform. And it's people like you that have done all that work that you can see. And it's lovely to hear about it and the people that you've been involved with. And when you're looking at your, because I mean, coaching, for goodness sake, you've been a coach for so long, haven't you? You must have been, so if you started sort of in 2000, I mean, and you're still doing bits now, aren't you? So
I don't think it leaves you, but I would say Steve Welford, so unfortunately he's passed away, but he set up a lot of the standards that I would sort of, even now, like, so I play a bit of wheelchair now. You know that. Other people maybe don't know that. I finally got
we're going to talk about that. Don't worry, I'm going to bring that in.
But you can transfer the skills and stuff like that. So I catch myself now. I'm not a wheelchair coach, and my coaching badges and that have lapsed and stuff. But you still bring in those same principles and those standards and the techniques and stuff, because rugby's quite a simple game, really, at the end of the day. We complicate it by trying to make it look fancy, but it's not that difficult. The execution of the skills is a difficult thing, like that sort of stuff. But I would still think about the things that we did that I did as a new player, under Steve. Passing drills and stuff, like, it's a fundamental. We didn't necessarily go into the detail that sort of came around with the when the 8-panel ball came around and the some of the two-handed carry and all of that kind of thing, but we did it. We just didn't know we were doing that. And those influences are still there, and you still can bring those things into game situations and training situations. And Yeah, try and pass on knowledge and skills and experiences and stuff to keep that going on. Do you know, you can't reinvent the wheel. But no, it's yeah, it's good.
So tell us your new passion, since you've taunted everyone, your new passion for rugby league. Tell us about wheelchair rugby league and your involvement.
Yeah, so age takes its toll and physicality and stuff. So running game is a bit of a no-no when the knees are ruined and stuff like that. But I watched the wheelchair World Cup when it was the World Cup over here, well, 21, 22, however you want to date it. The coverage that the wheelchair rugby got was amazing,
Mm.
and it looked fantastic. It looked like a great game to play. It was fast. It was, physical. And I fancied having a go at it. So after the World Cup, again, like the link with Jackie with the kids when it was the World Cup in
Mm.
2000, the Legacy Fund or the whatever you want to call it, the clubs were setting up wheelchair teams. And although I'm a Castleford girl, Wakefield was the nearest team that were doing taster sessions and stuff. So went over to a taster session with Wakefield Trinity and played for their team. So we've played a full season. We did a few games and a bit of a tournament back end of last year, and then we've played a full season this year. And I've been fortunate enough to be selected in the Women's Futures programme, so the England Women's Futures for wheelchair. So wheelchair rugby is inclusive. You can be able-bodied and disabled. You don't have to have one or the other. It's for everybody, and it's not male or female. So everybody can play. There's almost the only reason you probably couldn't play is if you were blind, because you wouldn't be able to see to catch the ball. Otherwise, there's people with limb differences, there's people with learning difficulties. There's no reason why you couldn't play wheelchair rugby. So I went to give it a go, and then they did some. So Martin tells some good stories about this. If you see Martin Coyne on anything, he says about they didn't need to have women's wheelchair because it's an inclusive sport. But then women were telling him that they would like to play in an all-women team and that kind of thing. So they did a couple of just women's sessions just for a bit of extra. And I don't know that they knew what it was going to be at the time. I missed the first one, to be fair. But then since then, there's been a couple of training sessions, and then they picked 16 players to play before England played France last weekend. And we played like the first ever women's wheelchair game with a view to playing France next year. So a women's fixture like the open team. It's not the men's team, it's the open team. Played France in the test match last week. There's hope that there'll be a women's game and a juniors game. So they've done juniors as well, obviously for the pathway and for the future of the game and players and stuff. And yeah, so I play wheelchair rugby now, and it feels like rugby. There's contact in it. The rules are the same as the running game, pretty much, but it's only 5-a-side. But we still play for 80 minutes, which is quite challenging. But yeah, I play wheelchair rugby now, and it feels like playing rugby, and I really enjoy it. And yeah, I finally got the chance to wear an England shirt, so I was quite chuffed about that. Although it was green, we wanted the red ones. They wouldn't give us the red ones. We had to wear the green shirt. But yeah, over in Wigan at Robin Park Arena, there was a little bit of a crowd. I think we gave a good account of ourselves. I think we put on quite a good display. It's on YouTube as well, which is nice. So we've been able to watch it back, and it's the first time. So first time for everything. First time playing in an England shirt, playing in a team of players that I didn't really know, and popped a tyre, which is the first time I've ever done that in a game. So I had to come off with 5 minutes left because my tyre had popped and we didn't have any spares. So that was a fun experience. But yeah, that's what I'm doing rugby league wise now.
Fabulous. And it's a great sport, isn't it? Well, I love watching it. Absolutely love it. And as you say, and I'm loving the fact that it's now getting the women and the juniors, and it's even becoming even more inclusive. So people have a choice of where they
Yeah.
play, which is really, really important. Wow. When you begin to look at all your involvement, what does it mean to you being involved in rugby league so much for so long? You talk about it with such passion and smile about your involvement.
It's mad, really, because it was just what I did. It didn't feel like it was anything special, and like it's only in hindsight when you sort of look back, you think actually, yeah, that is quite a big deal. I did have a lot of responsibility for things and for driving stuff on, but it's never just about one person either. It's all of us that were in those teams at all those different times, and you try and do like a bit of a list of like, well, who can we contact if we're going to have a bit of a reunion? And this list just keeps going on and on and on because you don't want to leave somebody out who was somebody's best mate who came and supported, never played, but just felt like they were part of the team. There's all the extended family that goes with all these people. That there was the team, and then there was the people who came with you and drove you to Crossfields on a pissing wet Sunday when it was 4 inch of water and a girl nearly drowned because when she got laid on in a tackle, the water was that deep. She got up spluttering because it was wet through. And all these, it wouldn't be possible without all these extra people that were involved. Getting fed after games in the club. There was a lady called Margaret who used to look after the food. Enid Hepworth, we mentioned before, she was always around. All these extra people that just come out in this spider web, and you go to the supermarket and there's people everywhere that you know because of rugby, and hey up, how are you getting on? And so and so, and it's just brilliant when you think about it that way. You think, oh yeah, if you hadn't have done that, what would life look like? It'd look completely different. Probably wouldn't live in Castleford. You wouldn't have had all these experiences. Travel to Uganda because of rugby, although kind of that's a bit of a sideline, but you just wouldn't have done any of those things. It would be completely different. And it's really rewarding. It can be tough, and it can be, there's hard times and you fall out with people and politics and all of that sort of thing, frustrations. Like the Super League's great now, but I wish I could be, around Lisa Maxady at the weekend. A bit like, I wish I was around now to get these opportunities that these lot have got. But your project is shining a light on the people that did come before, and giving the credit where it's due on, what has been a precursor to where things are at now, because, there's no way to measure it. You would never know where things would end up if something hadn't happened or whatever. But yeah, it's dead rewarding to think back about it, and you think, do you know what, actually, yeah, quite chuffed about the whole thing, really.
And so you should be, Bev. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. And I'm sure we could have talked for hours and hours and hours because you have done so much. But you're absolutely right. Without people like you within the sport, we wouldn't be where we are. You are a pioneer of the sport, and the way you give freely and continue to give freely to the sport is just an inspiration. Bev, thank you so much for the interview, and thank you for everything you have done, but also keep doing. Just to say it's really appreciated, and let's just keep that momentum going and the women and girls game growing.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much.